It's where the confidence is. It's where you have to follow. It's where the confidence is.
Hey, podcast listeners. Welcome back to When the Cleats Come Off. I'm Ashley Burkhart, turned Eagle recently. I need to stop saying Burkhart. It's not my name anymore. Jordan Taylor is in the house. Jordan, I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are about to have a really fun, loving conversation. We just talked for a half hour just about anything and everything from wine to Japan and earthquakes, but I'm already stoked. This conversation is going to be a fun one. So fun fact, baby sis is now playing at Michigan. You played at Michigan. What does she have to look forward to? I just want to hear from your perspective for her first and last season.
She's probably deep in the football season, and they're actually doing well. So that's like a plus. They didn't have quite the great seasons when I was there. But Ann Arbor is just such a great, like, spring in Ann Arbor and like home games are like, there really isn't anything that beats it. It's such a great time.
Yeah, and fall in Michigan is incredible. Like just the leaves changing. There's actually hills there, unlike Indiana.
And Honeycrisp season, Honeycrisp apples. If you haven't had a Michigan Honeycrisp apple, have not lived. It's so good. I
need to do that. Yeah. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, sorry, you don't have those right now. But when you come back from Japan, you can finally get some with your mom. Yes. Great. You have good cherries in Michigan apparently too.
Yes.
Isn't there something about cherries?
Yeah. I don't know where they're from, but I know they're good.
Somewhere in Michigan. I know. My grandma's always like, can you go up there and just get some so I can make a pie? I'm like, anything for you to make a pie, Grandma. I will go get you cherries.
Rewards check.
I love it. Well, before we start again talking about things not softball related, I'd love for the audience to get to know you and a bit of your story. So if you can take us through your pitching journey from when you started, what your parents were like influencing you, to where you are now pitching in Japan.
Okay. Well, I didn't start pitching till I was like 12, which I mean is still kind of early, but my dad had a team at the local kind of pony league, which is probably like they should do research on this pony league. It's called the Hart League, William S. Hart. The amount of people that came out of this league that played top division 1 softball, and like there's a couple MLB guys too, actually, is just insane. Like half of Tennessee's lineup that's been through there. Just there's so many people, it's insane. But he had a team, and I remember coming to him and saying, okay, I want to pitch, and my mom was like, no, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of whatever. And so she immediately set rules and was like, you have to practice every day. When we say you have to go to lessons, you have to go to lessons. So I'm like, okay. And so I was horrible. I was horrible. I probably still hold the record for pitching the ball over the backstop. I had no idea where the ball was going, but I always threw really hard. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was in that league, and I was always like in the like bottom division. I had like 2 leagues, like the competitive league and the coaching league. I was in that coaching league until I was 14. Like I was never in the good league ever. And then my mom kind of saw that I wasn't gonna really get anywhere and said, okay, we're making the journey to Orange County, which is insane to think about, leaving somewhere to go to Orange County, because it's like, but I mean, she thought I was really good and kind of just needed to get out of the like bubble, I guess. And so, I started playing for Cal Cruisers. And then from there, I went to Gordon's Panthers, which isn't an organization anymore. But I was from the 16s Panthers, I went to the 18s Panthers. And then, I actually ended up my last year, went back to Santa Clarita Valley and the Choppers, and kind of went from there, which now they're like all over the place, but they used to just be the Santa Clarita Valley. But I was all over the place. So many teams, a lot of coaches, And I had a local coach, and then we went to a just softball camp with Deb Hartwig and Susie Carl.
Oh,
Yeah.
Deb.
Yeah. She still sees me and she's like, I still remember when you were this big. Like,
Of
I was
course.
always this big, but we'll go from there.
Yeah. She
But
coached my
yeah.
teammate, Alex. That's how I know her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I saw her at Alex's wedding, which is like right after we graduated. That's how I met Deb. But that's so irrelevant. It's crazy. So you can keep going though.
Deb's like, she's seriously the greatest. And so yeah, I went from Susie, and then after I was on the Panthers, my coach Richard MacArthur, who ended up being my pitching coach, but he had me go to Ernie Parker, who's the like late and great, like any 80s 90s pitching video you would have had, it would have been Ernie Parker. Like he was the Mike Gray version, basically. Yep. All these videos. Mm-hmm. And he was a stickler, but he really did kind of transform me into kind of the pitcher I am today. And he actually came to Michigan and helped me one or two times when I didn't know what my mechanics were doing in the middle of my career. But yeah, no, he was honestly the best. So but yeah, I think that was it. That's a lot. It's a lot of softball.
Well, it took you to Michigan, and then you got drafted to play for the Pride originally out of Michigan?
Yes. So I actually said I didn't want to play on the Pride, turned it down, but they drafted me anyways and had me kind of fly out after and showed me around and said, you only need to be here for a month. And so I think I played two like normal regular season series, and then it was straight into championships. So my eyes were like this big the entire time. I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool. So you ended up playing for them, and then you played for the Australian national team, right? Was that after? Was that?
I was on Pride for 6 seasons and got traded to Australia, which was like beyond, not devastated, but I was not a happy camper during that time. But it was honestly the best experience, one of the best summers. And then from there, obviously, I got to know Australia, all the girls on Australia. I've gotten to go out there a couple times and play in their national tournament. And
fun.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those everything happens for a reason type of thing, no matter how angry I was at the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's obviously different going from Pride to a bunch of Aussies. The volume got a lot louder, but it was just great to like, I'm a really big like learner and like want to like kind of learn how people do things, and they just do everything so differently, pitching, hitting, style of play. So I mean, I was a kid in the candy store once I got over being butthurt, but
yeah,
no, it was great.
Yeah, I do remember Chelsea, who plays for Australia. She was my teammate. Yeah. Chelsea Forks. She was like, her swing was so unconventional, but she was always clutch, like it was like one of those things where I guess I was kind of introduced to something different culture wise. And I was telling you earlier, like I also had Japanese teammates, and talk about like complete 180 when it comes to culture and how they treat the game. Not like the way they treat it, but they literally, you bow to the field, right? Yeah. Like before you play, you bow to the field. I just think like when it comes to respect, it's so beautiful. So from the Aussie team, what led you to Japan and starting to play over there?
Well, I was already here actually when I played. So it was 2016, my first year here. I was coaching at Loyola Chicago, and God bless my boss, because this happened 2 years in a row. It was first Brittany Cervantes left a week before season, and then the next year I think a year to the day left week before season. Just in opportunities to go play. And at the time, I didn't think kind of coaching was going to be my career path. And I didn't want to turn down the opportunity to come play over here. And like, obviously I'm on year 5 from that happening. So, yeah, I was in the middle. I think it was my second season my second season that the whole Aussie trade happened.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed Natasha about the culture of Japan and like how different it is. Like you practice 8 hours a day. It's so different. But what have you learned from that culture or just like the way they play the sport? I mean, obviously you're there for 5 years. Things are probably fun and you're enjoying it and you're probably learning more than you ever have. But can you like just sum up that experience of just Japanese playing and what it's been like?
Well, they're definitely quantity over quality, like in their practice. But I mean, you will never meet someone more dedicated than a Japanese softball player. They are just so locked in, and it's just, I mean, every day they really don't have, they have one day off a week type of thing. They'll break after our first half and they break for like New Year's. New Year's is kind of their version of Christmas. And like that's it. Like they are probably 330 days out of the year playing softball, and it's all day. And I mean, some of the teams are different. So how it works here is it's companies sponsor teams basically. So I work for a hospital. Lucky in my old age and creaking bones, I get to get 3 MRIs, but yeah, so they actually have to go into the office some of the days. So in summer mostly they go in and work in the office. So there's a couple, like they work in like the babies ward, the NICU unit, like they hold babies. Like, we just sign up for that. But like some are like hospital greeters, and then some like are like assistants. But yeah, they're so dedicated and they're so passionate. Like there's so many times where we will win a game and half the team will be in tears just because they're so like excited that like kind of everything came to a head. But yeah, it's I've learned in just dedication and kind of like honoring what an opportunity this is, and trying not to take for granted that I get to play softball for a living. Which kind of sounds silly to say that you're like taking advantage of it, but or taking it for granted. But I mean, we get paid so much money to be over here in a completely different culture, not understanding what anybody's saying 90% of the time, even with translators, and just getting to play softball for a living. Like,
yeah,
what is
an
life?
An opportunity that, you know, I really hope and pray that we can have in the US one day. But I mean, I don't think you are taking advantage of, you know, the opportunity, but then again, like who wouldn't if you had that? So there was something that you said before about how you played on so many different teams prior to college. And I know there's a lot of listeners that, you know, maybe they're jumping around. Maybe they're like literally been on a team too long, but like, what was the reason why you jumped to a lot of different teams, played on a lot of different teams? Was it because the talent was better? Was it because you knew you'd grow there? Do you know why your parents helped you make those decisions to jump around?
Well, moving out to Orange County was the decision to get out of the bubble and looking for other opportunities. But beyond 16s, I had pretty bad luck, if we're going to be honest. So I was on 3 different gold teams, and my first year as a Panthers, and it folded. They just stopped playing. And then my second year, I was on one of the Bat Busters, and they were no longer a team for undisclosed reasons. And then my final year was on with choppers. So it was, I feel like at one point I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be known as like the girl that like can't stay on a team and blah blah blah. But like honestly, and I've met a lot of too with pitching coaches, and people want to stay loyal to the pitching coach and they like want to see it through. And my mom like saw a lot of with my first local pitching coach, and then we went to a just softball camp with Deb and Susie, and she was like, okay, this makes more sense. She was like, I see her already improving in just this 1 hour session. She was like, I think we need to make that step. And then she saw me kind of hit a plateau with that pitching coach. And so she was talking with Richard MacArthur, my 16 under coach, and he recommended going to Ernie Parker, which is like turning down Elvis at that point. Like you say yes to Ernie Parker type of thing. But it was kind of within 1 week, she already saw like even more improvement. So I see so many kids with like the same instructors and they're just not making any progress. And they're kind of just stuck in this like little like sand pit. And so my mom really did see the kind of foresight to be like, okay, this doesn't really make sense. Like, I think we need to change this person. So yeah, kind of made that move for me.
Yeah. So you ended up having to be really resilient when it came down to like going to tryouts all the time, probably.
Yeah. Because I did try out for all those teams. My best tryout story though still is Gary Hanning and my first ever gold tryout. And he had this big long spiel about how he wanted athletic pitchers. So we went to go do the running and I pulled my hamstring.
But you made the team.
The first minute I pulled my hamstring. I was like, this is probably not for me.
Oh shoot.
Good. I mean, it all worked out obviously, but I still remember I was like, okay, I'm gonna be athletic. I'm gonna run really fast. I'm the slowest runner known to mankind. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah.
You tried really hard. You gave it all you got.
The bat busters.
Oh my gosh. So what would you say to the athlete who's like super scared to go to tryouts? Like it's like, oh my gosh, this is nerve-wracking. Obviously you went all out and tore your hamstring in that story, but what advice would you give to that player who's a little nervous for a tryout?
That even Olympians got nervous going to their tryout. Like, you're gonna get nervous. You use that energy for good. You use those nerves. I think it's when the nerves get the best of us is when you start doubting yourself because of those nerves. Like if you did the work beforehand, that should be good enough. If you should be confident in the work. Now, if you didn't practice for 2 weeks before those tryouts, like you probably should be nervous. You probably should be nervous. But if it's nervous because you really want to do well, like it's just going back to your preparation and knowing that you did everything that you could, knowing you put in the work, and then whatever happens after that. But yeah, you should listening to some of these Olympians talk about the tryouts, like half of them were puking in buckets before they had to go out. Like the best get nervous. So I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. You almost have to like find something to hone into that you're like, okay, this is what I'm good at. Just be good at this thing. Like just use that as your driving force. Yeah. That's such great advice. So thank you for that. So you've been starting to do these things called like balcony series on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Is this your balcony in Japan where you're doing these from?
No, yeah. Where I was doing the balcony series. My apartment in Japan is approximately 150 square feet. It is tiny. It is a dorm room. And during quarantine, it's like if you go outside and get caught, you will be kicked out of the country forever. So I was not taking that chance. So my outside was my breath of fresh air was on my balcony. But yeah, all the Japan houses pretty much have balconies, but that's where they hang out their laundry because they don't really have dryers here. Fun little fact. But yeah, that's where I would go outside and do my abs and then random arm circles to try to stay in somewhat of shape.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. And on
Little
Instagram, you did this fun little thing where you started talking about different pitches and you really got into one, obviously your curveball because it's your favorite pitch and how to throw it. For anybody that's just like, what the heck are you talking about? On her Instagram page, she did a few IGTVs, I think, just describing how to throw
yeah,
specific pitches.
1 minute videos.
1 minute videos. Yeah, yeah. But that was like before reels were a thing, maybe. I don't know. But I found them super insightful. Like for anybody that's just being introduced to like pitches and like how to throw them, I thought it was awesome. But I know you also are huge on making sure you don't have 10 pitches.
Yeah.
You I think even I think I'm sort of quoting you that you're like, any girl that says she has 10 pitches, she probably can't locate them.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
so how do you feel about like when should you start learning pitches other than like a fastball and a changeup? And then maybe we can dive into some of those pitches that you had talked about too.
Yeah. I think the problem lies in where you have a 12-year-old throwing 6 pitches and they don't have their fastball mastered yet. If you don't have your fastball perfected, like everything else builds off of your fastball. So if
Mhm.
you still can't locate your fastball, you'll be damned if you can locate a curveball. If it's even a curveball, probably not going to be one. But I know when I was learning pitches, I was fastball changeup for a really long time. I didn't learn my curveball until a year into it, maybe. And then I remember learning curve rise, like right one after another. And then when I went to 14s, I remember my head coach being like, well, you have to have a drop ball and screwball too. And I'm like, why? Like looking back on it, like, why do I need that? So I just feel like a lot of times it's coaches that don't really know what they're talking about, like said like, oh, you need all this, like try to hold on to it. Like it just doesn't quite work. So it when in doubt, I feel like listen to your pitching coach and not quite the head coach. But yeah, it's just I think girls try to learn so much so fast without even getting the fundamentals down. Um, and if your pitch is doing the same thing as the other one, like just ditch one of them. like
Right.
I still remember one of the girls coming to camp at Michigan, and I swear she was talking for 5 minutes when I asked her how many pitches she had. Like she just kept listing them, and I was like, I just remember being like, okay, let's see your fastball. And it was like everything did exactly her fastball and her changeup are the only difference of all of her other pitches.
Wow.
So it's just learning the fundamentals and making sure that your mechanics are you actually have a solid base before you're starting all because if you have issues in your fastball, everything else is going to have issues too. So
Right.
it's just really getting the fundamentals down.
Yeah. So your advice, if somebody, let's say, has a curveball and it's not really flowing, like go back to the fastball. Let's see how that looks, and then kind of jump back into not relearning the curve, but
Yeah. Well, first,
everything
like
else will kind of fall into place.
identifying a lot of times with curveball issues, because curveball, she's a fickle pitch, that one. Everything has to be on time. Your hand has to be on time, your hips have to be on time, and it has to be like a 1-2 type of thing. And so many pitchers get the hand part of it, but not the hips part of it, or vice versa. And so it just doesn't quite work. Like that's always the pitch that I know if I'm on time if my curveball's working. If my curveball's all over the place, I rewind and go back and just throw a couple fastballs and then go back to my curveball and see if it's working. And that's always when I'm coming back because I every time I kind of leave Japan and come back, like I take a solid month off. Otherwise my shoulder would have ran away from now by now. It would have been a soul entity. But every time I come back and throw bullpens, I always end with the curveball because I'm like, yep, we're not there yet. So
Mhm.
it's just learning the timing and everything of getting everything to work, that you have to, if it's not working in your fastball, it can't work in your curveball.
Right, right. Now, I do love how you describe how the curveball works. So if there's anybody out there that's like, "Oh yeah, I really want a curveball one day," could you do like a 1 minute, Instagram reel version of like, obviously people can't see it, which is hard,
I
but
know.
I
That's
know.
my
Well,
favorite thing I've ever drawn in my entire life is the revolving door curveball. I was laughing to myself. Albeit I was
I
slightly
enjoyed it too.
delusional in quarantine, but I was laughing for like 10 minutes before I posted
Yeah.
that.
As long as Jordan doesn't delete it off her Instagram, you can find it there. But how would you describe how the curveball works with just your words?
So I always try to like break it down like as if I'm talking to a little kid. So with curveball, first of all, you have to get on the inside of the ball. With any pitch, you have to think about where you're wanting to push. I wish I had a softball. Where you're wanting the pressure to go, and that's where your hand needs to be. And so for the curveball, you have to have some sort of pressure pushing through the center and the outside of that ball, and that's what's going to make that spin. So you're having to push through this part in order to make it spin. So you have to make sure your hand's there in the first place. And then I talk about it like a revolving door, like those little glass doors through. Oh, you should have seen me trying to translate this to Japanese because it took 30 minutes, not this 1 minute breakdown. If you think of your hand like a person and each leg is like a door, so door, and you're trying to get that person on the inside of the door. So you want to make sure that hand comes on the inside of your hip before that door closes. Otherwise, if they're coming at the same time, that ball is going to go right down Broadway, right down the middle, and it is going to get crushed right behind you.
So graphic. I feel like I'm
So
watching a horror film. No, I'm kidding. But basically, like keeping it inside, like close to your body before you start that rotation
Yeah,
with your,
yeah,
okay, got it.
yeah. Making sure you get your hand on the inside of your hip before you're closing, because
Yeah.
the harder you're slamming your hips closed, that's what's going to make the ball really turn a corner. It's that aggressive closing of your hips. But if
Mhm.
it's coming at the same time, it's just not going to go where you want it
Yeah.
to.
I loved how you described the pressure of the ball, like on your hand, because I think a lot of pitchers that are like trying to, let's say, go for like a rise ball, even, they're literally only holding, and this is actually, I'm thinking of myself
And
trying to
up
learn
in
a
the
rise ball.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm only using like the very bottom half of the ball. I'm not using the middle to provide pressure before the spin happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning
Mm-hmm.
so much. This is why I quit pitching. I was like, I can't figure a rise ball out. I'm done.
Well, the only
Um,
reason I figured that out too, though, is that one of the pitchers at Loyola Chicago had an off-speed rise ball, and when I asked her how she threw it, it was like a magical pitch. I asked her how she threw it, and she like really didn't know, and so
mhm.
we like took it slow mo and tried to figure it out, and that's kind of where I got the whole pressure thing, was because she was spinning it. If this is the ball, she was spinning it only in the front half of that ball. So
Mm,
she's coming through, she was spinning it and had like absolutely nothing behind the ball. And so she's only spinning it on the upside. And that's what made it so much slower, because it was that slow spin
yeah.
instead of having something pushing through that ball. And that's what keeps the speed. So that was kind of like where I got the whole pressure thing from,
Wow.
was this magical off speed rise ball.
Isn't it fun how like when you learn these things and it's like after you've played in college and you're like, crap, like it would have been nice to kind of know that
I
concept
know.
a
Always.
little
So
sooner.
many things learned. So
This is
many
why
things.
you've peaked after college and you're still playing
Yeah.
because
This
you're
is why you
still
keep
learning.
playing. Keep on playing.
Keep on playing. I love it.
Keep
Can you describe a changeup?
oh.
I'm putting you on the
So
spot right now. I hope
so my changeup's not a true changeup. It's an off speed. And the same thing I just talked about, you have to have nothing behind that ball. So if you have any sort of pressure moving through that ball on the back side of that ball, then it's going to go too fast. So anything, so when we talk about like flip changeups, we're talking about the back of our hand and pulling through here. So you even
Mhm.
see that there's nothing behind that. The only thing moving forward is the pull. And so good change-ups are going to be that you don't have anything pushing through that ball. It's all kind of pull or on the side. So mine, it varies. It does what it wants.
It does whatever it wants to do.
It does whatever it wants to. Mine is kind of a culmination of several pitches, but mostly, for the most part, I throw it kind of on the side. So it's more of a horseshoe. So when I come through, and I have a knuckle. So I have a knuckle that kind of sets it so I'm like locked into place on those seams. And any picture of me throwing a changeup, I have these like gnarly T-Rex hands coming through. And it's because when I snap back, the ball is peeling off. So anytime you want, like if you're taking a picture as a pitcher and you kind of at the end of your pitch have like, I call them pretty hands and ugly hands. If you have pretty hands, that means you just let go of the ball. So it's just going to be kind of a slow spin. You want that quick backspin. And that's what that, like the ugly hands are going to provide, because you're almost peeling it back. Like you're peeling an orange almost. So you're peeling it back. And that's what's going to make the ball spin super fast. And that's what's going to create those like drop off the types. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I love how you describe this.
Letting go of the ball. So it's just going to kind of be like it's going to be slow, but it's going to
kind of stay in the same spot.
Yeah.
Ish. And you want that ball to move. You described this so well. And for anybody that's just like, man, I wish I could like watch her describe this. This is recorded and will be up on YouTube. So if you're like dying to know this ugly hand, pretty hand thing, like
ugly
go to YouTube to watch. I have the pleasure of getting to watch this right now.
The visual is so much better.
I was gonna say the visual is great, and this is why I also like the fact that you've visualized these analogies on Instagram, and why I was so excited when I saw them. But last but not least, let's just talk about the screwball.
Yes.
You talk about like the external rotation, and you also talked about how like you didn't exactly have a great relationship with the screwball. But when it does work, what are we trying to make happen there?
So it's a hard pitch because it's not a natural movement for us.
Right.
So internal rotation is going to automatically be a little bit stronger just because it's a natural motion. That external rotation, it just puts a lot of pressure on our shoulder, especially our elbow. I don't know how many pitchers I've met over the years that have had Tommy John surgery, and it just blows my mind. And honestly, it might be from kids learning screwballs at the age of 10. And it's just, to me at this point, it's kind of irresponsible pitch coaching. Just because it's just so much pressure and it's just not a natural motion. But it's the least work, quote unquote work, out of a pitch, at least for me, because it's such a small motion that you can do in that position. So it's all your fingers having to kind of push through towards that inside corner. So you already are starting on the inside of the ball, and all it is just kind of pushing it through towards that inside corner,
like opening a door almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
So screwball and rise ball are actually pretty similar in finger movements. It's just one ends up pointing towards the inside corner, and one ends up pointing up towards your chest. So
got it. Which one's which for anybody listening?
The one pointing up towards your chest would be the rise ball. Towards the inside would be so you just don't quite finish the point for the screwball, and then you go all the way up and finish the point for your rise ball. So, but really for screwball, it's where you step for me. So for me, I'm stepping towards the opposite end of that plate. And so if I want the ball to go inside to a righty, I'm stepping towards the outside corner, and I have all of my energy moving towards that outside half. So outside to center part of the plate, and you're just slamming through. And it really is just kind of a flick of the wrist to get it to go to the inside, but it's just setting up your body so you have the room to get on the inside of the ball.
Yeah.
That's the one it's fickle because as soon as those hips come through, man,
Yeah.
that ball right down Broadway. You don't want that.
It's
So
like game over. It's
yeah.
funny. I love hitting. Obviously, that's my baby. This is probably why I ask so many questions to pitchers because it's something I don't really know a whole lot about. But when you were describing like opening up your hips, making sure there's room to work, I think of that
Mhm.
as hitting very similar. Like if you're
Yeah.
closed off, like that inside pitch, there's no chance you can get your arms, inside the ball, which is kind of how you
Yeah.
described it. But it is kind of a similar move. Like the way you're balanced upon, like when you're about to release, like you have to be within your legs to allow that space for you to kind of work and do your magic with your wrists. But
Mhm.
um, I don't know, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I just love how similar
Well,
they are.
really, like chest down. If you pause a pitcher in the middle of their motion until the end of their motion, if you pause chest down and look at a hitter's swing, it's almost identical. It's
Hmm.
almost identical.
Yeah,
If you don't pay attention to the arms and whatever we're doing with those
right.
things, all the leg work. That's it. Whenever like I'm talking to it or working with like a hitting pitcher, like they always have the same issues pitching as they do hitting with their
Yeah.
legs every single time.
Hmm.
Every single time.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting. What baffles me though is sometimes when I work with a hitting pitcher and she's like at the time better as a pitcher than she is a hitter, I always refer back to pitching. I'm like, okay, how like good you are with your pitch in this spot. We're actually trying to get to that same spot
Yeah.
in our swing. And like as soon as she makes that adjustment just mentally, she's just like, oh, I can do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can if you put them
Yeah.
together.
It's just
So I know
where
I
the
told you,
confidence is.
what'd you say?
It's where the confidence is. It's where you have to
Yeah.
follow, is where the confidence is with the kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so I know I told you we were coming on here to talk about pitch calling. We haven't talked about it yet. Um, but I think confidence has a lot to do with pitch calling, like
Oh,
which pitch
1000.
you're gonna throw. Um, so I mean, where can we start with this? I think just I know you mentioned how as a pitcher, you're trying to like trick the brain of a hitter. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that approach on the mound a little bit?
Yeah. Well, my number one hobby in life is making fools of batters just because it's so much fun. But it's all from baseball stuff of just the closer the ball gets to your face, the faster it's going to appear. So a pitch that's say 100 miles per hour, just because we're doing baseball, is going to look way faster at your face than it is on the outside corner, even though they're the same speed. And so, following that kind of logic, it's just playing with perceptions of batters. It's playing with their eye levels. So, if as a pitcher we're staying at the same eye level the whole game, you're not fooling anybody. You're not tricking anybody. You're gonna have very comfortable batters in the box, and pitchers should be able to recognize. And it blows my mind when they can't. Should be able to recognize a comfortable batter versus an uncomfortable batter. If you're seeing them just not even flinch at pitches, they are very balanced, they're fouling pitches straight back, they're very, very comfortable. They know exactly what they're looking for. They're not worried about anything else that you're throwing. An uncomfortable batter is going to be shifting a lot. They're going to be kind of moving around in the box. They're going to be like swinging at pitches that probably shouldn't be or visibly frustrated. And so pitchers should be able to recognize kind of those signs. And it should be a pitcher's job to make the batter uncomfortable. So making sure that we're going inside and outside, up and down, showing kind of all the zones and just
Mhm.
making them kind of shift around and not be able to, because a good batter is going to have their feet set, is going to be kind of in their legs and ready to hit. But if you can take them out of their legs, that's when the pitcher's won.
Mm, I'm trying to think of all the times I was very uncomfortable in the box and was totally exposed. Um, but I'm also loving this because once I got better at hitting, like later into my college career, I kind of felt the same way from the batter's perspective. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to try to make this pitcher feel uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
sometimes my approach was, okay, this pitcher has a really good rise ball. I'm going to get on top of her rise ball and hit it. or at least make a really like great attempt to scare her a little bit. Because like if that's her
Yeah.
best, I want to make her nervous. And as a base runner, of course, my job was to like make the defense freak out when I was on the bag. So I love how we're kind of like going at it from like, how can I make someone look silly approach?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because it's kind of like that itself, that concept is a confidence booster, in my opinion. Like
Oh, for
trying to take the level up, make them look silly. Now, good hitters, good pitchers, they're resilient. They're not going to allow it to last more than like 2 or 3 pitches. But I do like that aspect that there's a lot of confidence when it comes down to like, how can I make this person look silly?
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to get beat. Sometimes the plan's going to work. But
Well, it is just like a cat and mouse game, and like those
yeah,
are always like my best moments, is like facing the best hitter and like trying to figure out, which Japanese hitters are a little different than American hitters, and like NPF, like you kind of always had those like epic battles with people. Like there
mhm.
was just those like select few where you're like, I don't know what to throw. You're like, leave me alone. Go away. But it's just so much fun, like trying to outsmart the hitter, and like when they like just get a hold of something, or like when they just fouled off like kind of your best pitch, and like knowing that you had to throw another one. And
Mhm.
those were always the most, like my most memorable and like most fun moments, were just like this like little game within a game type of stuff, and just trying to outsmart the hitter.
Yeah. So you don't have to drop names of like who those hitters were that made you uncomfortable, but like just it's probably like the ones who get the hype because like the Lauren Chamberlain, the one who's like coming out of college dropping bombs like crazy, or
Yeah.
like what do you do in that situation? Because I know every pitcher has some batters where they're just like, oh, her again, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what do you do in that situation?
I had a couple throughout NPF. Luckily, I didn't have to face Lauren Chamberlain too
Lauren.
much. The one I do remember was fun against her, but like people like Brittany Cervantes, we've been facing each other since we were 14. So it's like her and Danielle Zimkowitz. Like I had nothing else for them. Like, I don't have any more tricks. Like sometimes I was like, maybe I'll just throw it down the middle just because I haven't seen it yet. Like let's try there.
Surprise
Uh,
them.
yeah, but yeah, just like kind of going through and just trying to be something different than you were before. And memory is a huge thing in remembering kind of what you threw them and what they hit. My favorite person ever to talk pitch calling with was Chelsea Thomas. She went to Mizzou. She
Mm,
tried for a few seasons. She worked differently than anyone I've ever met before, because she would go to a batter and she knew exactly what pitch she wanted to get them out on,
mhm.
and then she would work backwards from there.
Ooh.
And so, which I couldn't wrap my head around, because I'm like, well, what if they hit the first pitch? Then what? You just start over again? Like, what happens? Like, how do you keep your confidence if you're like, well, that plan went down under? So, yeah, she was a brilliant, because she had rise, drop, change. That was it. But she could put those pitches on a dime wherever she wanted to. She could put them. And so she would always be like, well, I know I want to get them out on low and outside, so I'm going to work inside, one off the plate, go back inside, and then go back to this. And I'm like, how do you that's a lot of planning. Like, I'm just trying to get through the batter. I'm just trying to
Mhm.
throw it, get through. So but yeah, it's just, I never was very big at planning ahead,
Mhm.
mostly because or like, every once in a while Megan Willis would come up to us in dugout and be like, okay, what do you want to throw this person? And I'm like, it's whatever the situation calls for. Like, I don't know. Like, it's a stressful situation. So I was always kind of a plan as I go type of thing, but I was always very aware, mostly because Ernie Parker was a very, very good teacher at pitch calling, and recognizing hitters and where to throw them type of thing, of working on the fly and kind of knowing where I wanted to throw the ball as soon as it's called, but not necessarily having an action plan before I started, which I wish I was like that. I feel like it'd be so much less stressful actually having a set plan before going into an inning and knowing exactly what I want to throw a batter. But yeah, it was always, obviously the catchers in the NPF are brilliant. I mean, Megan Willis and Chelsea Goodacre were some of the best pitch callers in the game, so you didn't have to think too much. But yeah, mostly I just threw my changeup.
And it works.
That's my plan of attack.
Buckle the knees. I love that. So you mentioned how Ernie taught you a lot about pitch calling. Are there specific things that you remember from him that you've stuck with, still use on your end that he taught you?
More about reading batters and kind of their body language. And, you know, if you are throwing, just say you're throwing a sequence of pitches outside and they're getting more and more and more and more on time, or they're starting to lean and you're starting to see that, then it's time to throw something hard and inside. And vice versa. If you're seeing them start to lean backwards, you can pipe something on the outside and they're probably not gonna see it coming or hit it. But yeah, just more of reading batters and seeing what combination of pitches. He just always kind of made me very aware of what combination of pitches were working and why they were working. So before I kind of understood the whole concept of pitches close to your face look faster, he kind of taught me the whole rise ball changeup combination. I didn't understand like why it worked, but obviously like later learned why, but always kind of understood that concept of pitch calling, of kind of deceiving batters. I just didn't quite understand the whole brain reaction and all that. So yeah.
So why does the change rise work? Are you willing to share that information with all the listeners?
Yeah, so rise ball inside is going to be closer to your face, so it's going to look a lot faster. Yeah. And then when you're throwing a changeup outside, it's going to look a lot slower. So you're going to, that combination of stuff is your brain's going to be a little bit shocked from the ball coming fast to your face, that it's not going to react in time to that changeup.
Yeah. And this sounds like this is why Chelsea Thomas is so good at this, is because she had 3 pitches. Yeah. But like she had those pitches mastered to where as long as she can consistently put those pitches where she wants to put them. Yeah. She's golden. Like
a master of hiding the ball. You did not know which pitch was coming. Change up to a rise ball to drop. It was all hidden. She had the same timing. Yeah.
Yeah. She's good. She's so good. I think I faced her maybe like once or twice in the league, but to me, I think she retired too early, but I mean, everybody has their reasons for retiring. Yeah. But she was so good. She was a master at her craft and knowing what to throw when. Now you also have talked about how a lot of coaches in your heyday would always say, you don't hide your changeup. You don't hide your changeup. Well, yes. But you're still fooling batters. So clearly you hide it well. I know there's probably a lot of pitchers right now listening that are like, yeah, like people are starting to pick my changeup and they keep yelling from the dugout and it's making me upset. What would you say to that pitcher who needs to hide it more? What are some ways that she can work on that?
If they are swinging and missing, who freaking cares? If you are making people look like ballerinas in the batter's box, who freaking cares? I throw a knuckle, and it is, I mean, I learned different ways to grip it. So I grip it actually as I'm coming through my motion. So as I'm coming past my hip up into my circle, I grip it. But I mean, it gets picked all the time. It infamously got picked by the Bandits. There's little fights involved, but anyways.
I remember this.
There's a little drama.
I remember this.
Yeah, lots of people.
That's funny.
Anyways, that whole series, after all that drama, I think one person may have made hard contact. After them screaming sit, one person made hard contact. And I'm pretty sure it was Brittany Cervantes, so that doesn't count.
Of course it was Surf. Okay, but like I think there's something to that as a pitcher. Like if it's being picked, if it's being yelled about, I think a lot of pitchers would let that get into them, you know, and affect their confidence with the pitch. So clearly you had this confidence that maybe it was just the fire of the situation. You're like, watch me. But like, where were you mentally in that situation against the Bandits where they were picking it, but it was still working?
Well, I have the worst poker face of all time. I will not be going to Vegas anytime soon. You can read my face from 50 yards away. But I mean, again, they weren't hitting it. So at some point you have to be like, why am I going to try to change? Why am I going to make an adjustment or not throw it? Because that's what a lot of pitchers do, is it gets picked and they stop throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if they're missing it, on the opposite, if they're hitting it, then you have a problem. If they're picking it and they're hitting it, then you have a problem. If they are picking it and still swinging and missing, keep throwing it, man. Just, you know, you give it a little wink and a wave and a evil glare on the side. Maybe some choice words if you're Jordan, but
now I obviously know like maturity comes with probably more confidence because you know yourself better now than you did when you first started playing. But like, how do we get some of this confidence that you have as a pitcher to just like keep making them look stupid? I got this. Like, I feel like obviously everybody deals with confidence in their own way. But what do you think led to you being so just have all this swag on the mound?
That's a good question. I am not, like, I was the most painfully shy person through high school, even in college. The girls at Michigan still talked. My senior year, they were still talking crap about me, about my official visit, and how I didn't say one word. I just sat on the couch like, is this college? Like, can I go home now? So a lot of it was faking it until you made it type of thing. But I mean, it was, a lot of it was confidence through preparation. Practiced a lot. I mean, I was throwing in my backyard. My mom might remember these stories a little differently than I did. Probably said I missed one or two, but like I remember throwing in my backyard all the time and like by myself. You know, I had, even at Michigan on Sundays, I would go in by myself with Striko, the old backstop with the little squares in between, and I would do workouts by myself, and a lot of it came from like, I know I put the work in, I know I worked my tail off, and you know, like at some point you have to connect your bullpen to the game and just know that what you did in practice was enough for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the drive to just be like, I'm gonna beat you. Like, it's just, yeah. I'm not sure that can be taught, of just that whole mindset of being kind of like, I'm gonna win this battle, like you're not gonna beat me type of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a trainable thing, but it's something that you have to actively think and actively buy into, just the whole competitive spirit and knowing that you're going to beat the person in the box.
Right. Did you grow up with like a competitive family? Like I had two younger siblings. My dad was a collegiate athlete. I've always been embedded with like a competitive mindset, but no, not for you.
I mean, I played a lot of sports growing up. I say played. I tried a lot of sports growing up.
We all did, right?
I was horrible at all of them. I just found a picture the other day of me trying high jump. You just see like legs, just legs. It's like, there's no shot of me getting over this bar. Just no shot. But yeah, I mean, my mom was she's a tough gal. Like she knew what she wanted for me. She wanted me to be successful. She put me in kind of the best schools growing up. It was always a very like driven kind of environment for sure. But I wouldn't say competitive. I mean, my younger brother played football for like 2 years before he my brother is so bad at football, and I tell him this all the time, so he's fine. He would literally like he was a center in football, and so he'd snap the ball and then just kind of stand up and do this and not move. And we're like, hey, like you gotta like the ball's over there, and he's like, no, but I did my job. But the play's still going on. Like he never got the concept that there was something else happening and he needed to join the action.
Oh man, that's funny.
I wouldn't say competitive. I wouldn't say on that one.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, is there anything pitch calling wise that we haven't dove into yet that you think is important for a young player, or even just parents or really coaches should know?
This new buzzword, tunneling. And I think because I ran a poll a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, honestly, on tunneling and what people thought it was, because I kept seeing these videos pop up on Instagram on like the explore page of people commenting. They're like, that's great tunneling. And it was just a video of the girl. And I was like, what do people think tunneling is? Because tunneling is, I mean, it's mostly a baseball concept, and it's from baseball, at least of what I think it is, or my understanding of it is the release point, and a baseball pitcher's release point, and how you can pick up, because it's enough time from them releasing the ball. If it's, at whatever 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, that's something that they can see a difference in and pick up on, at least really good hitters. Softball, there's not enough time coming off that hip. Like it's just, there's not enough time, and it's just, it has to be such a vast difference for there to be. And if there's a vast difference, that's probably not the reason you're getting a hit anyways, because it's probably not the best of pitches coming at you.
Yeah.
So I ran a poll saying, like, what do you guys think tunneling is? Because tunneling to me is two different pitches following the same path from the pitcher to the plate to the batter, and breaking in different directions. That's what tunneling is to me.
Got it.
Something going, so usually it's like a fastball going straight and then a drop ball. So drop ball, like dropping off the table at the same level, back to back. That's a hard combination to hit. And it was like kind of like a 60-40 thing. Like 40% of the people thought it was a pitch coming off the hip, tunneling, and everything looking the same, and 60% thought it was the pitches moving in different directions. And so, yeah, I just think people just use these like buzzwords and they don't know what it means. But it's like pitching instructors using the word tunneling, and it's not correct. And so it's just these like buzzword stuff kind of.
That's interesting. So we need to like figure out what I think your definition of tunneling makes a ton more sense. Like being able to deceivingly like have a pitch go and then like make like the dip or the big move, the big drop or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I hadn't even really heard that term much. So, I mean, obviously,
on the pitcher side
pitching.
of the world.
Yeah. Again, not there. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to ask this question, because in the pro league, your catchers are probably calling everything, right? Like you didn't have like a pitching coach call. Is that how it is right now in Japan too?
Yeah, no, we don't have a pitching coach at all.
Yeah. So your catcher's calling everything, and your catcher's trying to understand where you are. How important is just the conversation with whoever's calling the pitches? So just like with your catcher, probably now you're probably saying, okay, this pitch right now is money. Like, let's work with that.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations do you have with your catcher that people can learn from, that just at least kind of help the relationship with your catcher for you to be effective?
Yeah. Well, talk constantly. The best example I can use of this is Monica Abbott has been throwing to this catcher and obviously she's been in this game a long time. She calls so many timeouts and it is so annoying when we're playing them, but like
Hmm.
it's what she needs to do. It's what she needs to communicate to her catcher to make sure that they're on the same page and make sure
Hmm.
she knows what they want. And they've been working together for years.
Yeah.
Like in and out of these daily conversations like this, and they're still talking through stuff. So it's kind of, one, never assuming you and your catcher are on the same page, making sure that you guys are, it's verbalized that you're on the same page. But yeah, I mean, like during the game, a lot of times we'll talk if something gets hit. She'll kind of come in and we'll talk about like, like what we probably should have thrown instead, or if it was the right pitch call, it was just in the bad location,
Hmm.
um, or if something's just not working. I've done with like mid-game bullpens, just going and throwing 2 or 3 of something and being like, okay, it is working. It's just it's in my head type of thing, or it's in
Right.
my attack plan, or just something else. It's not mechanics, it's something else, and working from there. But yeah, and just with something's not working, trying to talk about throwing something else, or if they're yelling out locations, a lot of times she'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna sit in the center, like, and catch stuff on the side or move last second, and like making
Hmm.
sure that's a conversation. So all of a sudden, like if she just doesn't move and I'm like, am I throwing the wrong pitch? Like that's happened. But
Hmm.
yeah, it is really just talking and making sure that, through the game, if something's getting hit, that we're on the same page about why it was getting hit. And maybe, if it was a pitch call option, talking about what we should have thrown instead, or maybe out of order, like if we threw a curve, then a drop, then a screw, like maybe talking about taking that curveball out of there, just doing drop screw or
Yeah.
something along those lines, if we were just throwing too many pitches, or we kind of like use that kill pitch too fast and like had to kind of scramble after that. um
Hmm.
but I mean, there's so many conversations. It's kind of hard to narrow down what we really talk about in
Well,
our Japanese English.
that's gotta be a challenge. I'm sure it's gotten better though the longer you've been there. But I know, I think just even like that few minutes that you just spent talking about just different scenarios and what you're talking about, I think it's very clear why pitching can be addictive. Like, because you're constantly trying to learn how to win. You're constantly trying to learn how to defeat the hitter. And you're still probably learning. You're still making
Oh,
mistakes. Like, I think
absolutely.
that's the beauty of it, is like probably when you first start out, pitching can be overwhelming. Um,
Oh,
but
oh, it still is overwhelming.
yeah, yeah. And like,
There's so many moving parts.
totally. But as you get more experience, as you work through hitters, as you consistently learn how to make, let's say a girl gets a hit off of you the first at bat, like find a way to make her, make not as good contact, or just, strike her out, which I don't know if you think about striking people out or just trying to expose people, but I think there's just a beauty in just trying to learn how to keep growing from the mistake pitch, or from the great pitch that, struck the girl out. Like, there's just so much you can learn by simply just being aware of what's happening and having consistent conversation.
Yeah. And another great asset to use too, and it pains me how little pitchers use their own teammates who can stand in, or if you're in a scrimmage, there's so many times where like the pitchers are kind of in their own worlds and then the batters are kind of in theirs. And I
Mhm.
very rarely have seen pitchers kind of ask if someone, if one of my teammates hits a home run off of me, I'm asking what they saw, if they were guessing that spot, or if they were just on time with it, or if they saw something that I was doing, or if they, if they saw something in the movement in the fielders. Like, I want to understand why that they were on time if I thought it was a good pitch. If I knew it was down the middle, I'm not going to ask what they
That's huge. I don't even think I really had like, obviously I hit off of some pitchers in college, but never was I really asked. Things
they're
like
just
that.
in their own worlds. And I mean, I didn't do it in college, absolutely not. But every once in a while on Pride, I would talk to people like Kelly Kretschmann, just asking like, hey, like, what did you see? And I mean, half the time the answers were like, I was just swinging. Like, it's not always going to be a gem of an answer. Or it's going to be like, dude, that was right down the middle. Like, it's not always going to be what you want to hear, but I think like it's just such an untapped resource, and it kind of drives me crazy that coaches don't encourage that kind of crossover. I think it really is just like, okay, pitchers, go to your building, hitters, you're in here. Like, it's just already kind of separated, that we're just never kind of brought together and like asked opinions of each other. Because I remember how many times I was on Pride and I'm like, dude, you're swinging, like, you gotta like, and because it's different wording coming from a pitcher. And like when I was coaching in college, that's what the girls always said, like, it just sounds different. And like, sometimes it's that small difference that will actually make it click, because it's not hitting language. It's like, oh, I can see like your whole chest before you even start swinging. Like, that's going to be not something that the hitting coach is going to ever say. It's going to be something about their hands, or something about bat lag, or something, something like opening up too soon. But it's just that sometimes it's that small phrase from a pitcher that might trigger something, or like clue something in, and just make someone think a little bit differently about it.
Yeah. And obviously that comes with like experience. Like an 8-year-old pitcher is not gonna be able to see, like, you're worried about your own crap at that point. But the longer you play, and here's the deal, if you're doing it with teammates and you're an experienced player and like you're in it to win it, obviously, then why not give the feedback to your hitter? And if anything, if that teammate doesn't like feedback from you, then tell the coach. Like, hey, I don't know if this is a thing, but this is what I see. And like, just communication, I guess, is always the key. Sounds like.
It's just such an untapped resource.
It's just more data. Like, who doesn't want more data? Well, some people play with like
some people data. Really don't want
data. You're right. I was kind of the hitter that like I didn't want to know anything. I mean, obviously I want to know what this pitcher is throwing and what she's good at. But I don't know. That's the game that I like to play. But if you're one that thrives off of data, or you're one that, is a competitor, you probably want to know this information. This is so good. Okay, so I've already taken up so much of your time. It's like almost midnight where you live. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you can come here and talk about things that we haven't yet talked about. Just the analogies you give are so great. Those people that are like, oh my God, this girl like knows what she's talking about, I want to follow her. Where can people find you most often?
For softball stuff on Twitter. And it's my name, Jordan Taylor, but the J and the T are 7s. It's really hard to like verbalize what my Twitter name is. I'm like 7 Order, 7 Ayler. Like, what?
Good luck finding that. No, I'll put it in the show notes. And if you want to go look at some of the Instagram, at least those balcony series that we were talking about, I'll definitely pop that in the show notes too for people to check out. But I want to finish off with a fun little 5 to Thrive rapid fire. You in?
Yes.
Look at you sitting in your seat different, like getting prepared. I love this. These aren't hard questions. I hope they're not. What is, or who is a pitcher that you looked up to growing up?
Growing up, I mean, growing up, it was the kind of the 2008, the 2004, 2008 team, and just, those are like the most all-star pitchers you can get. So, the Jenny Finch, Kat, Monica was in that 2008 group. So Lisa Fernandez. Yeah, I don't think I had a favorite, but yeah, I was watching all sorts of pitchers growing up.
Yeah, this is like a side question. I'm just curious, what were you watching? Like, were you watching the routines? Like, I'm just I'm a big proponent of people watching the best do what they do to help you learn what you want to do one day. But what are things that you saw from them that inspired you?
I was for sure demeanor and watching kind of how they carried themselves on and off the fields, interactions with coaches, with other players, with catchers. But I mean, I couldn't tell you still probably to this day, besides, I mean, Kat's known for her drop ball, obviously, and rise ball, but like, I don't think I really paid attention to their actual pitching. It was just more of like,
Right.
just their fire and how aggressive they were and just their confidence, really.
I love that answer. What's some advice that you'd give your younger self suffering through the beginning stages of pitching?
Key suffering. Advice that I would give. Oh wow, these are heavy questions. What are you talking about? They're easy. Advice would just, I mean, I wish I had more confidence earlier, for sure. I wish I had like not confidence so much as the kind of will to like soak it all in and kind of learn from my environment. I think I was so self-conscious when I was younger and so shy that I kind of just, I was like, I was on the team, but I wasn't really on the team. Like,
Right.
I did my thing and I, said hi at practice, but I just didn't really talk or like didn't really like interact too much. So yeah, I just wish I had a little bit more kind of self-awareness, like not so shy, probably. Just a little bit more.
I like that. I like that answer. What was the greatest lesson you think your parents taught you?
Ooh, not to take anything for granted. To kind of know what opportunities were coming to me and why they were coming, and to take full advantage of them, and kind of just make sure that anything that I was given, that I really saw it for what it was and I was fully accepting of it.
You have cool parents. I'm excited to meet your mom in Ann Arbor watching my sister play this spring.
Yeah. You'll hear
awesome.
before you see her.
I can't wait. Before I ask this final question, I just want to thank you. This has been a blast. I don't know why we haven't communicated in person sooner, but you just have such a mature knowledge of the game that I'm just so happy that you could come on and share your knowledge with us.
No, thanks for having me. I mean, I've been around long enough. I'd hope I'd have a mature knowledge of the game.
Yes, you have done more than most in this game, so it's been pretty fun to watch. Yeah, awesome. Well, final question that I have for you: what's your favorite thing about being a pitcher?
Ooh, not to sound like the most pitcher of pitchers, but the control. The control of it. I love having kind of the pulse of the game, and being able to get out of situations, sometimes getting into them, but getting out of situations and being able to kind of pick up the team and have the team pick me up, vice versa. And yeah, it's definitely control.
I love that answer. That's why you're still playing. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for coming on, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is cool.